Right. We are recording, and I can't remember what the settings are, but if you do not want to be on camera, if you're a participant, feel free to go ahead and turn your camera off. But this is being recording, and we will provide this YouTube video after if you'd like to share it with your colleagues or other people that might be interested in watching the webinar. So thank you everyone for being here today. I'm Paige Summers. I'm with the Tennessee Department of Health. I'd like to thank Tennessee Local Food and UT Extension for their partnership with organizing this series. This is our second webinar, part of a 5-part series about the intersection of agriculture and public health. Today's topic is soil health and food nutrient density. We have a wonderful panel full of a wide variety of different expertise. So we have some great questions. They will be sharing their knowledge with us today. So just thank you again, everyone. And at the end of the webinar, I will provide links for the remaining 3 sessions if you're interested and available to join those. So Natalie, I will go ahead and kick it off to you to take it away.
Amazing. Thank you, Paige. And yes, also just huge thank you to the Tennessee Department of Health for really this was Paige's idea, and we were so excited to find an opportunity to merge these topics that have such a strong connection, but we don't often get the opportunity to talk about the intersection of food and agriculture and public health. So this is really exciting, and just a quick overview of how this is going to flow. We'll hear some introductions from our panelists, and then we have some curated questions for about 30-40 minutes, and then we'll leave 15 minutes open for Q&A at the end. So please save your questions. If you are worried you're going to forget your question, feel free to drop it in the chat. If I see it while we're in real time and it makes sense, then I'll chime in with that question. But otherwise, we'll have time at the end. So please be thinking of your questions and what you'd like to hear from these amazing experts in their field. So I guess the one thing I want to say before we dive in is that really what we want to do today is thread a thread. We want to talk about soil health and how that impacts plant health, which impacts the fruits and vegetables that we're growing, and then of course how that impacts our individual health and our community health. And I think all of us on this call are really passionate about that and are excited to dive into what that really means. So I guess I'll introduce myself first. My name is Natalie Sievers. I direct a nonprofit called Tennessee Local Food, and we support farmers and local food systems across the state of Tennessee through education and resources and meaningful connections. And very excited to be here. So to start, I would love to have Dr. Clardy kick us off with an introduction. Dr. Clardy is a professor at Tennessee State University, and I will pass the mic to you, Dr. Clardy.
Okay. As she said, I'm Arvazina Clardy, and I am an associate professor here at Tennessee State University. I'm also an extension specialist, so I work a lot with small and limited resource producers. I work a lot with community gardens, and so we just try to get people excited about growing plants. My specialty is horticulture. I started off as a flower girl, growing plants and growing flowers and stuff. And then I kind of made the transition to growing fruits and vegetables. And so now I specialize in growing international and alternative vegetables here at Tennessee State.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say that when I met Dr. Clardy at TSU, she was in her greenhouse taking care of some plants that I didn't know what they were. And I was so excited to learn about these very just interesting vegetables that I had never heard of. And she was sharing about all the ways that they support people with diabetes and other things. And I'm excited to dive into those things later. So next, Catherine Ray, who is the executive director of the Heimerdinger Foundation. I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation to be here with this great group of community friends and partners. So our organization, our nonprofit organization, is the Heimerdinger Foundation, and our signature program is Meals for Health and Healing. We're in our 14th year of providing nutrient-dense meals to people who are in cancer treatment, free of charge, serving their families for up to 6 months throughout their primary cancer journey to feed and support them and to help provide nutrition education that they can take with them beyond the 6 month of meals that we provide. Two important pillars of our work are nutrition education as well as the meals, and also youth development, because we bring teens into our program to work in our kitchen and learn about food and preparation and giving back to the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine. And I'm so inspired by the work that you all do. So thank you. And next we have Kelsey Davis. Kelsey wears many hats, but today, well, maybe she'll bring all of that experience to the table. But Kelsey works with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. And she also is a farmer and has a farm called Blooming Acres Farm. And Kelsey, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So like she mentioned, I work for TDEC, which is the state's environmental agency. And my role there, I work as a sustainability coordinator for our state parks. So we have a wonderful state park system and a lot of wonderful land. And what I get to do is help them kind of work on restoring some of that, creating natural habitat and ecosystems. So that is part of what my knowledge brings today. I also have a farm, like she mentioned. So we're located in Dixon, Tennessee. We've been in operation for about 6 years now, and we identify as a regenerative flower farm. We are Cumberland River Compact certified as a river-friendly farm. And so we do a lot of regenerative practices that I'm excited to be able to share with you guys today. And then I also serve as a adjunct professor at Lipscomb University. And I teach a sustainable food systems course for the Institute of Sustainable Practices. And that's where we kind of get into more of how the food system interacts with local communities, environment, public health, and that sort of thing. So like she said, lots of different hats, but they all sort of intertwine with each other.
Amazing. Yes, they do all intertwine. And so Kelsey, I want to start with you. My first question, just to kind of ground us in talking about agriculture and how the way that we work and grow food impacts the community health. So you, like you said, you identify your farm as a regenerative farm. Can we start with what does that even mean? What does a regenerative farm mean to you? And talk a little bit about what those practices, how those practices impact the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So regenerative agriculture really is sort of like a shift in the mindset from traditional agriculture, and even goes above and beyond sustainable agriculture. So sustainable typically would just mean sort of maintaining your status quo of operations, not depleting anything, but kind of maintaining that current level. When it comes to regenerative agriculture, we're focused on actually healing the ecosystem and kind of viewing it as a dynamic living ecosystem rather than just a production floor for, crops for humankind. So it's really more like a philosophy that's centered on soil health, understanding soil, understanding that it's really a complex microbiome that drives the health of everything that grows above it and the health of those, that consume what is grown out of it. So there's a few main core practices. You can really dive into regenerative agriculture. There's a lot of great resources out there that I encourage everyone to kind of read up on after this. But just for today's purposes, there's 3 that I'm going to touch on. So you're really focusing on disturbing the soil as little as possible. So with large-scale agriculture, there is typically a lot of tilling. And so we try to focus on doing the exact opposite of that. And the reason that is because every time you till the soil, you're disturbing the level of the microbiome and the underground fungal networks and everything that's living in there. And so think of, your home, your apartment, wherever you may live. If somebody came around once a year and shook everything around and everything was completely upside down, you don't know where anything is, you're not going to be functioning the way you need to be functioning for a while. It'll take you a while to kind of get back to where you need to be. And that's what tilling does to the soil. So typically with regenerative agriculture, you don't till. You're not actively flipping the soil. You try to keep it intact and little disturbance as possible. The next thing that we try to do is we keep living roots in the ground. And the reason we do that is because the microbes that live in the soil need food. They need that interaction that's happening from the roots that are in the ground. So instead of, spraying things and killing them, we actively make sure that every bit of soil on our farm is covered with some sort of living system. And that really also can serve as strategic cover cropping to prevent weeds and to make your farming more efficient long run. So there's multiple benefits to making sure that you have living roots in the ground. And then last but not least, we focus on biodiversity. A lot of large scale agriculture is called monoculture, and that's where you're focusing on just growing one crop. So think about when you're driving through Tennessee and you see large cornfields or cotton fields or whatever it may be, soybeans. That's the exact opposite of what we're trying to do, because what can happen is if you're growing the same thing in the same soil over and over and over again, it can really deplete the soil nutrients. And it can also lead to larger pests and larger fungal issues because all of those things know where to go. Every single year for years on end, you've had that same crop there. So it makes it really, really easy for those pests to arrive, which makes it harder for you as a farmer to get the crop that you're trying to grow, which can ultimately lead to, more pesticides, more chemicals and things just to be able to get the crop that you're trying to grow. So for us, what we do is we have this system where we rotate everything on our farm. We never grow the same thing in the same place twice. And we're always trying to make sure that we have multiple varieties of different things growing so that if you do, have a pest come in, maybe it wipes out one crop, but you still have other crops that can sustain your operation. So it's better for not only the environment and the soil, but it's better for, your local economy and your operation as a farm as well. So that's my high-level overview of regenerative ag.
That's great. Honestly, it's a really hard question because there's a lot of different definitions of regenerative agriculture. And thank you. That was a wonderful overview. I do want to add one thing that it's important to know that regenerative agriculture is not a new thing. This is just mimicking ways of growing that indigenous people have been using forever. It's coming out of this conventional industrial system that we've been in. But important to know, this isn't like a new novel thing. It's also mimicking natural systems.
Exactly.
Does anybody want to add anything to that before we move on? Okay. And I also will also just tag on to Kelsey's point. It also, I think that a really sustainable farms also involve making sure that that farms are economically viable, and that for the farmer, this is a viable career path, right? And this is what I think we're experiencing right now, where so many farmers just aren't able to make ends meet and to be a farmer, a full-time farmer. So this is a huge challenge. And of course, there's many barriers facing next generation farmers, of course, land access and access to capital and all these things. But we could go on and on. So back to where we were headed. Dr. Clardy, I'd love to turn to you. And you are an expert in plant nutrition. Can you kind of connect those dots between the health and the state of the soil and how that impacts the plants that we're growing in the fields?
Yes, I can. As Kelsey said, it's really important to maintain a living ecosystem within the soil. So you have to, when you look at the soil, you have to sustain plant life, animal life, and life for humans. And so the soil is a balance of physical, chemical, and biological properties that provide nutrients, water, and it also supports productivity. So I try to think of it this way: whether you're growing in the field, in the greenhouse, or in a raised bed, you have a small ecosystem that is going along in your soil. Okay. And so that's why I tell people, even if you do greenhouse plants and you do raised beds, don't skimp on cheap soil. Okay. Make sure you get a good, healthy soil. And the biggest thing for field, make sure you do soil testing first. Because a lot of times I used to work in garden centers, and people will say, oh, okay, if it tells me 1 tablespoon per gallon, what if I put 2 tablespoons per gallon of fertilizer? Won't my plants be a lot bigger? Well, they might, but chances are they'll be toxic. And we don't want to enter the toxicity from the soil into your vegetables, into your eating it. So that's why people have to maintain a proper health. So healthy soils will give healthy plants. In plants, there are about 16 or 18 essential elements that plants have to get to be able to complete their life cycle. If they're short on any of them, then your plant is not, in some way it's going to be at a deficit. So it's really important, but you want to follow the directions to make sure you're doing the right thing. As I say, healthy soil produces healthy plants, and healthy plants produce healthy people. So that's one way that we can look at it that way. I think most of the field tests are like $15, and they're done through the University of Tennessee. There are even some take-home, do-it-yourself. They're colorimetric systems, but they will let you know if your soil is either too high or too little in nitrogen, too high or too little in phosphorus, and too high and too little in potassium. So you can end up, if you like to do your own chemical analysis, you can kind of also do it. Also, there are places you can take your plant material if you're growing to make sure that your plant has all the essential elements that it is needed. So it's really important to do those soil tests. It's really important if you're going to buy a raised bed to start off with some good soil. I'm not plugging anybody, but read the bag. A lot of them will already have the essential elements in it. And feed your plants regularly. Like how we have to have nutrients to grow, your plants need nutrient and water to grow. And I tell people, one of the biggest things that get people, I think, in gardening is that when they put it out initially, they're all gung-ho. It's like late April, everybody's happy. Then July and August hits and it's hot and nobody wants to go out and water. But if you start small and then, go big after that.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, when I first started a garden, I didn't nothing was happy. Everything was very upset. And then I learned about compost and my life changed and everything got better when I just learned about compost and adding some good food to those plants. So, um all right, I'd like to move on to Catherine. Catherine, so at the Heimerdinger Foundation, I understand that food as medicine is a belief that you all hold and a principle of value. And right now we're hearing a lot about food as medicine as a movement. So you don't necessarily have to talk about the movement at large. Although if folks haven't heard of that and you're interested in this topic, there's a lot to read about right now around this food as medicine movement. But can you talk about what that means to you and your organization, and how does that fit into your mission?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Clardy. I love your mantra around, the each step and what a difference it makes for health, and where it all begins. And appreciate the work that you and Kelsey are doing and your wisdom and knowledge, because that's kind of where we pick up from your produce and your hard work and efforts. For 14 years now, we have been operating as a nonprofit, believing in food as medicine in this community. And our work revolves around oncology and cancer patients, because we know that nutrients and the right nutrients are critical to healing from cancer treatment. Cancer treatment is brutal, and people need support in restoring their health and their bodies after going through a diagnosis and treatment. we have seen firsthand how the food that we provide, helps reduce hospitalizations, rehospitalizations, malnourishment, and the ability for people to just get through cancer treatment. Because if you lose weight, things are going to have to change. You might even have your treatment paused. So it's really critical that people are eating well and eating nutrient dense foods to help support that healing process. So we emphasize eating the rainbow and really promoting a plant forward diet, because we believe that is just very fundamental to our health. And we involve lots of vegetables, fruits, legumes, lots of herbs and spices, because we're sugar-free, gluten-free, dairy-free. So everything we provide, we want it to be immune boosting and anti-inflammatory for these people going through these harsh treatments. And that it works so well with treatments, and helps them restore their health. So we want these nourishing meals to be accessible during a time when people have very little energy. They're so stressed. They're managing medical appointments and treatment schedules, and the whole family is disrupted. So to be able to come in and provide this food for them each week, it's about 4 days worth of food, really gets them through some hard spots. And food is a love language. And it's so beautiful to be able to give food to people, especially when it's the quality from farms such as yours, and that you've been talking about. That is really, really beautiful. It's the best. And there's a great psychological impact of knowing that you're being served something so beautifully and so carefully selected. That's part of the healing process as well. And so, of course, we know that food is medicine, as we provide it, starts long before we get it in our hands. And we're so grateful for that. And we really try to work with partners in the community, gardens and farms, who follow these practices as much as possible, that we want to incorporate those foods into our meals, because it provides so much more diverse, nutrient dense properties and nutrients. And so that is the area that we're in, the oncology and cancer support, and believe and have seen the change in people being able to enjoy these meals and learn about them and learn about where real food comes from.
Thank you. That is so inspiring. And I just want to stay with you for a minute, Catherine. And can you share any kind of examples of success, or how the food has impacted some of the people that you work with?
Yes, so we do pre and post surveys in our program. So we're gauging early on where people are regarding their nutrition awareness, and then we do a post survey as a comparison to see what they've learned over that 6 months of being provided meals. And we see the increase in their knowledge around nutrition, their practices. They're incorporating items that we include in our meals. They're incorporating those into their meals now. We provide nutrition education. We have an on-board nutrition educator. We provide weekly nutrition education. So they're learning all along about what we're including and why. We also offer educational sessions to the public. They're open to the public through webinars and our quarterly food connections classes. We invite people to that. And, another important preventive element to this is our adult and teen volunteers who come in. We have about 80, 85, 90 volunteers currently who help us in our kitchen shifts. And they're coming in and learning firsthand where this beautiful produce came in that they're suddenly working with on Monday morning. They're learning how to process that, how to make the most of it, how to incorporate it into meals. And they see it go right out the door in meal bags. So they're learning so much about that continuation of that thread, and what it means to have sources like, Dr. Clardy's and Kelsey's and others in our community to help us be able to provide that.
Amazing. Um, that's so wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And I'd love to talk, Dr. Clardy. I would love to hear from you about some of these alternative crops that you've been studying and growing. And if you could share a little bit about the research. I know the bitter melon and the bottle gourd.
Bitter melon, bottle gourd, and tender are all international vegetables. Most of them are grown in Southeast Asia. A lot of them are grown in Africa. They're in the tropical region. So I was asked a couple of years ago to see if they would grow in our region. And so we just started out with a few seeds, not really knowing what to expect. But I'm finding out like the bitter melon helps control or helps A1C levels in diabetes and pre-diabetes. And so I talked to, we have a large population of Southeast Asian people and Indian people here, and they eat these vegetables all the time. Okay. Bitter melon is exactly what it is. It is bitter. But there are two varieties, which is the Chinese, which is less bitter, and the Indians. And what I'm finding culturally, the people that eat the Indian do not want the Chinese, and the people that eat the Chinese don't want the Indian. So they're used to how bitter it is, and they accept to take it that way. So one of the things we have been growing them, we've done field research, and we've also done greenhouse research. Now, in our original greenhouses that we had before, I did notice a lot that we did not have a problem with pests coming in, because the greenhouses we had were open. They were almost like commercial greenhouses that they use in Florida. So the bees can come in, ladybugs can come in. So if there's any problem with any type of bug infestation, it is taken care of that way. And the one that we have now, it's a closed system. And so therefore, we have to introduce bees to it to help with the pollination. And then we do have, this crop, we have noticed we've had a little problem with white flies. But because we don't spray technically, or we try not to spray, because people are going to consume these vegetables. Now, when grown out in the field, you don't have a problem with anything. There's nothing that really attaches itself to eat. Bitter melon, like I said, will help control A1C levels in diabetes and pre-diabetics. And also, it is high in vitamin A and C and fiber. And it basically helps regulates blood sugar and reduces inflammation. Okay. The bottle gourd, and I always try to tell people they're all kind of in like what we call the squash family. So if you like squash, you'll have to find ways to cook the bitter melon that you'll like. But the bottle gourd, if you like squash, you'll love bottle gourd. Okay. And so it kind of takes on the taste of whatever you fix it with. And so you can mix it with tomatoes, you can fix it with onions or whatever and make it. Bottle gourd is like 96% water. It's high in vitamin C. It's high in B complex vitamins and potassium and magnesium. And most of these vegetables are no more than 15 calories per serving. So even though they have a high nutritional value, they have a low calorie content. Now, the one that we also do, and you can get a fruit that's ready in 25 days, is tender. And tender is really like an antioxidant, okay? And it reminds you of a little small apple. If you put it out in the field, within 25 days, you have a crop. So you can also rotate planting it. So you start one crop, then within 20 days, you start another crop, so you can keep it coming continuously. So we've worked with a lot of small producers that will grow these vegetables. One lady I had been working with in West Tennessee started growing bitter melon. She started off the first year at like $5 a pound. The second year she went to $8 a pound. The last year that I talked to her that she was selling it by the pound, it went up to like she was charging between $13 and $15. Now she sells it by the piece. So whatever, it doesn't matter what kind of piece this or whatever, she sells it by the piece, and she does it that way. So there is a market. I have some. I'm starting off a small farm myself, and I'm doing bitter melon. I mean bottle gourd. And the only thing about all three of these, they will need some type of trellis. Now, Tinder does not need trellising as much as bitter melon and bottle gourd. You got to trellis it. You got to get it up off the ground to make sure you see the fruit. Because once you see that white flower in bottle gourd, then the fruit is right behind it at some point. So if you get it off the ground, then you spot the white flower, you know to come back and within a week or two, there's your fruit. So you don't miss fruit. I think one of the first years we did it, we just let it grow along the ground in one direction, but we were missing them. And so what happens is it has really large leaves, and the fruit likes to hide under the leaf. And by the time you come back, it's a lot bigger. So as long as you can, they tell us, I've had different people to tell me what size they like better. Some people like it large, some people like it small. They said it's easy to eat. You don't have the seeds, but all of these are very high in medicinal purposes. Bottle gourd, like I said, will help with high blood pressure. So if you have high blood pressure, and as I said with Tinder, it's a total antioxidant. It is supposed to be good for everything. I always laugh because when we first started doing bitter melon, they said one of the side effects of bitter melon is that your hair doesn't turn gray. And I said, I sure wish I knew before my hair turned gray. But there's all kind of health benefits in it. It would probably work well with a lot of your patients if you can kind of find a way to, especially with bitter melon, to be able to fix it where they would find it palatable. But bottle gourd and also Tinder, like I said, if you like squash, you'll like these two vegetables.
Wow, so interesting. Somebody asked, what is the name of the third crop? Can you just say those crops one more time?
Okay, bitter melon is one, bottle gourd is the second, and Tinda, Tinda, is the third crop.
Perfect. That is so fascinating. Something that you mentioned, I think, whenever we met Dr. Clardy, was about, a big part of this is really the education around these. And I know that Catherine, you just mentioned that, and Kelsey, you mentioned this talking about your shop in Dixon. And I'm just want to throw this kind of question out: is, what opportunities do you all see for advancing nutrition education around these topics? Like, do you see opportunities for partnership or collaboration, or do you have thoughts about ways we can get this information out to the general public more effectively?
We have a fact sheet. We produce a fact sheet on each one of them. So it will educate people on the medicinal benefits of it, how to grow it, and how to prepare it. So we have some fact sheets. I think a couple of them are on TSU's Department of College of Ag extension line, and we're always willing to send them out if people would like some.
Amazing. I wonder if we could get those to include in our post email message or something. Anybody else want to add to that? Catherine, did you have something?
Um, just awareness of our on-site opportunities, our food connections classes. They're completely free of charge. They're usually quarterly in person, but we also have webinars that we have started successfully since last fall, where a nutrition educator is focusing on a topic. And recently it was healthy breakfast and snacks, because we provide lunches and dinners primarily. And people said, well, what about breakfast? I never know what to eat about breakfast. So she did a wonderful session on that. We have handouts, regarding those kinds of topics. And so those are always possible. we invite people into our space. I mean, anybody who wants to come and see our kitchen in action, it's the best way to really see this mission. And from there, we can do all kinds of things. You know, we could come and cater something. We could do a nutrition presentation. You know, we're open for models like that with all kinds of partners, and really value our cancer community partners so much, because we do a lot of that collaboration with each other, which is helpful. And so we're open to lots of ideas and have a good bit in place currently.
Amazing. Yes, I love any opportunity to talk about ways to, yes, or maybe there's people on this call that might like to collaborate with the Heimerdinger Foundation. So love to hear about that. And Kelsey, so I want to kind of zoom out now, right? We've been like kind of focused on food, nutrition. Let's zoom out and talk about local food systems at large. And so you were earlier kind of making that connection between the soil health and community health. But if we kind of zoom out and look at sort of what is the value of making our food systems more local and regional, and how does that impact our community and public health?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a local farmer, I will say, first and foremost, if you are purchasing local, it's going to be the healthiest option that you can get. You can talk to your farmer. You can ask them specifically about their practices. They'll have knowledge about the nutrients of what they're growing. So if you are looking for, that sort of medicinal properties of something specific, your farmer is the best person to talk to about that. But yeah, if it has been made clear from the conversations to date, your healthier your soil is going to be, the healthier the plant growing is going to be. Therefore, the product, the vegetable, the fruit, the whatever it may be, is going to be healthier for you. So it's going to have it's going to be more nutrient dense. So it's not only a win for, your personal health, the public health, your local community, but it's a win for that farmer, because they have so much more love and effort put into that crop. They see that crop every day when they walk by. So it's more like a direct tie for you, but also just for the community as a whole. I'll also say that because the crop is grown locally, there have been studies that have been done that show that the further a crop is transported, the longer it sits on the shelf, the more nutrients it loses. So the sooner you're able to consume it from it being harvested, the more nutrients and the more health benefits you're going to be able to get directly. So local grown things have just a higher benefit in general, whether it's, you're just looking for the nutrient density, whether you're looking for supporting your local community, your local economy, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of benefits with just the local aspect of it. And I would say from the farmers that I know in the Middle Tennessee region, I can't speak for all of Tennessee, but most of them grow, even if it's like subconsciously, most of them grow in a way that is in harmony with nature, because that's what they know. No farmer, intentionally tries to grow with poor practices. They just grow how they've been taught. And so the smaller scale farms that you're able to purchase from locally tend to grow with more regenerative practices, with less sprays, more in harmony with nature, more aware of, what their local water system looks like, and their growing practices and how that affects those sorts of things. So they're directly tied to your community health as well, because farms have impact on their surrounding ecosystem, whether they're aware of it or not. So if you're supporting those local farms, there's a good chance that you are directly supporting a local healthier ecosystem and habitat for, your neighbors, for the animals and that sort of thing. So it's kind of crazy how once you actually think through everything, you can really quickly tie how everything is connected to each other. Kind of went on a tangent there.
No,
but-
amazing. I'm throwing these really big questions at you, so thank you. Yes, and just to yes to everything that Kelsey said. And just to tack on, the food that we buy at the grocery store travels an average of 1,200 miles. That's a lot of miles. That's a long time to be in a truck traveling across
Mm-hmm.
the country or beyond, and yes, like Kelsey said, every day that, goes by after something is harvested, its nutritional value goes down. So there's many, many benefits to supporting the local food economy. Does anybody want to add to that?
I would love to add, this is so great, and it's so informational and educational for me. Just some, real things that have happened. I mean, we've been in this 14 years, and there are countless stories about how serving the right food, the nutrient dense food, has changed people's lives. It's profound. And I just wanted to share a couple of scenarios just for people who are working so hard to grow this wonderful food. It doesn't come out of a box, all the processed foods, and what you know what hardship that's creating for our health, across the globe, and especially in our country. Two things that have happened that I can share with you, and this has happened more than once, but one in particular, a client who had a high grade lymphoma and went in for treatment. She came upon our program, got enrolled, started the meals, and midway through, her oncologist did her blood work, and she reported back to her female oncologist and said, "I have never seen anyone's blood work look this good, at this stage of treatment. And what are you doing? What are you doing differently?" And she shared the meals that she was being provided. And it was just incredibly inspiring to know that people are hearing real results from eating well, and how it can reverse um, lots of medical issues, of course, but how it helps in the healing process for cancer treatment. And we've heard that many times, but that's a specific case. And then one client that we had, her teenage son, the family was served our meals. He, of course, going through the stress of his mother having cancer, and really listening to the information about the meals coming to their tables every week. And he was so inspired that he wanted to take a homemade hummus that we had served with crudités. He wanted to take that to his sports team one afternoon. He was assigned the snack. And so he took, these beautiful organic fresh vegetables, a homemade hummus made from nutrient dense vegetables. And it was so impressive that, that thread, that chain, those trickles of change happen when we have access to the food first, the food that's been so thoughtfully and carefully grown, that we have access to that, and that we can produce it into something that makes those kinds of differences for people. It's incalculable, really. You have no idea what this is doing and how it's changing health and lives.
That is so inspiring. I have goosebumps. And I just want to also, yeah, just to add on to that, it is one thing to know about how meaningful nutrient dense food is, but it's another to have access to it, and it's another to have time and capacity to prepare that food. So I think it's so incredible that organizations like yours, Catherine, are taking that step to prepare it so that it's ready for people, because gosh, what a barrier, just preparing the food for many people. So thank you. We have a little bit of time left, so would love to hear from anybody that's on the call if you have questions. if you have thoughts, if there's just something that you'd like to hear more from about from a panelist, please feel free to come off mute and you can speak. If you don't want to have your voice on this recording, you can put your question in the chat.
While we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions, Natalie, I was thinking about your question earlier about kind of like the education and outreach aspect. As far as the farm goes, I will say there are a lot of farms that actively will do tours and volunteer opportunities, and it sounds like other organizations in this area, in this space, do as well. So for, just the folks on the call here today, if you're more interested in learning more specifically about soil health, I can't recommend enough visiting a farm. Because until you see where your produce, your crops, your fruit are coming from, a lot of people don't have that, direct connection. We do blueberry U-picks at our farm, and we'll have folks who have moved here from California or, wherever they may be. They've never seen a blueberry on a bush. They don't even know what color it's supposed to be when you pick it. And so being able to have that conversation and talk to them about, the soil and the sun and how that process works and what you're looking for and the nutrients and the flavor you get out of that just from that combination of things is really, really beneficial for folks to be able to put that entire cycle together in their head. And so like some organizations that we as an office have volunteered with before that do similar work is Society of St. Andrews. I know they do a lot of volunteer opportunities. There's a really awesome nonprofit farm in the Nashville area called Cultivate that I'm pretty sure still do volunteer opportunities. Great mission there. And maybe just reach out to your local farm if you know of one. And if you don't, get on Google and maybe find one and just reach out and see if they have any volunteer opportunities or just, I think having that direct soul connection is where it really all begins.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you know what? A lot of organizations like Society of St. Andrew, I'm sure, would be so grateful, maybe Catherine's as well, for volunteer help. And yes, getting out on the farm is like, that's where the learning really begins. We do have a question in the chat. I was waiting for this one. I have a response to this, but I would love to hear from everybody else. The question is, what can be done to make healthy local food more affordable? Economic side of this.
I'll just speak on my farm's behalf. So you may or may not be aware, a lot of what's happening right now with like fuel prices directly affects fertilizers, which is directly affecting a lot of the prices of both local and not local crops and produce. So one of the things that, we focus on at my farm to keep our things affordable is we don't use fertilizers. We use those regenerative practices that we talked about. So when we use cover crops, for example, we're adding organic material back to the soil. We also add compost, which Natalie mentioned earlier. So things that you can produce on site, they're free of cost to us. They add that nutrients that we're looking for, and they help us to be able to keep our product in an affordable price. Not all farms are able to do that. There are maybe someone on this call can help me remember. There's an affordability program that a lot of the Nashville farmers markets participate in, and you basically get credits and you can shop your local farmers market. Anybody know the name of it?
The double snap.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so there are, statewide mechanisms in place as well to help with the affordability, especially of like the local higher quality crops.
We get asked this a lot. We serve people from all socioeconomic backgrounds, but we do get asked, how can I afford this? What can I do? And we certainly understand rising food costs are affecting us as well in our program. And this isn't a complete solution, but it's a response that, if you can take a look, and we educate about this, the environmental work groups, Dirty Dozen and Clean 15, Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 each year, that prioritize list of the things. If you can't do it all organic, what can you buy? What's really important for you to buy? And there are 12 items listed this year. We've looked at that and shared information about it so that it helps prioritize your shopping. If you can't do it all, maybe if you're going to purchase these, try to get organic apples, for example, berries, some of those really important things, and that can help, in your purchasing decisions.
I'll chime in there. And I think that's a great tip to prioritize. What are you going to focus on in terms of local or organic? One thing I just want to mention, this isn't an answer, this isn't a solution also, but whenever we think about the food that we're buying at the grocery store, all of that processed food, it is highly subsidized. It's not the true cost of the food. And same with the fruits and vegetables that might be cheaper at the grocery store. They are subsidized through extractive practices, land practices, and exploitive labor practices. And so the cost, while it might look less, the tag might be less, someone is paying for that. It's not the true cost of the food. And whenever we buy from a local farmer, they're employing people in the community. They're using practices that are regenerating soil, supporting clean water and air, and having kind of a ripple effect in terms of their positive impact. So that doesn't answer the question, how do we get the food more affordable? But it does add a little bit of context as to why the food looks so expensive in comparison. It's not really a fair apples to apples situation. But I think that the double SNAP is a great one. And then there's a question about, what about people living between the gap? That's a great question. And here's what I did when I was right out of college. I started volunteering on a farm, and I know that not everybody has time to do that, but here's what I did. I started volunteering at a CSA pickup. A CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. Many farms have a CSA program where you can sort of subscribe. It's like a subscription to a box of vegetables. I couldn't afford the vegetables. I think it was $750 for the whole year for 30 weeks. That's what it was many years ago. And I would come and volunteer at the CSA pickup for a few hours. And then I got free vegetables every week. And you know what? I'd end up with a lot of the extras left over too. So I was able to get even more. It was amazing. And that led me on my journey to move to a farm and change my whole life. But volunteering, if you can spare a couple hours a week, and there's many ways, whether it's volunteering on the farm, maybe it's packaging boxes, maybe it's doing some marketing, maybe you have some other skills that farm could utilize that have nothing to do with farming, right? Farms are small businesses. Those are a few ideas. There's some more questions, and we only have a few more minutes. Here's a gardening question. If your garden soil is too acidic or too basic, what are some tips for making it more balanced? Dr. Clardy, I'm looking at you on this one.
Okay, so if you have a high pH, you have to do pH readings, okay? And so the pH meter is anywhere from 1 to 14. And where we try to grow initially is between 6 and 7, okay? So if you're looking to grow things like blueberries and rhododendrons and things like that, so you need a low pH, okay? So what you would do to lower your pH, you would add sulfur, okay? To raise your pH, you would add a liming agent. So if you had a real low pH that was a 2 or 3, and you're trying to get it up to a 6 or 7, you add a sulfur agent. I mean, a liming agent to raise it, and sulfur to lower it.
Thank you. And I want to add, Allie put in the chat, Allie works with me. Thank you, Allie. She put in a link to a list of all the locations where they'll accept the double up SNAP dollars. And so that's basically, they'll give you twice as much the value for if you're using the SNAP dollars. And I had one other idea to the question about, you're not eligible for SNAP. How do you get that food? Another idea that I've also done is trading services for vegetables, barter Farmers love bartering. If you like to bake bread, maybe you can trade them vegetables for bread once a week. Maybe you have another skill. Maybe you have a craft or something else. But think of what like your skills or talents or passions are, and find a farmer that will barter with you. And if you can't find one, reach out to me, and I'll help you find one. Because I can tell you, farmers, they will typically, they'll barter with you. I think a lot of them that I know.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, find your local farmers market and show up maybe even at the end of the market. Introduce yourself to some of the farmers and see if they have like a volunteer opportunity, like she mentioned, or bartering. My husband works a lot of the Nashville farmers markets, and that's what they do. All of the farmers barter at the end of the farmers market. So can confirm they do that often. I was also going to add to the soil pH. So we well, long story short, we got some soil testing at one of our other growing locations, and it had, I guess, a high pH. So we were trying to make the soil less acidic, and we did some research. And something else you can also add, which if you're, maybe looking for free options and don't want to have to go purchase some lime or something, is we used wood ash, just because that's something that we actually had. And then did a whole growing season and tested it again the next season, and it was in the range we were looking for. So there's a lot of options. You can just do some basic research on maybe things that you can get for free, maybe that you either have on site or that your friend or neighbor or something might have, depending on how big of a space. If you're just doing small garden spaces, that's easier. If you're doing like an entire farm like us, you might need larger volume and you might end up having to go purchase something. And then one more thing. There is a farm, cannot remember their name, but they have a program sort of like the CSA that Natalie mentioned, but it is a volunteer-based CSA. And so basically you come in and put some hours in at the farm, however many you have available, and then they compensate you with fresh vegetables that you help manage and learn. And so like it's a learning project where you're helping the farm and also helping to feed other individuals, but you get that, institutional knowledge, and then you can go home and grow your own whatever it may be. So there are farms that offer programs like that as well that have no cost whatsoever associated with them and are directly tied to, feeding individuals who are looking for that. So, and maybe we can follow up with the name of the farm if I remember it or find it.
Yes. So great. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you to all of our speakers for taking time out of your day to share your knowledge. We're so grateful for all the amazing work that you do in the community to produce food and to share about it and to get it to people that need it. And I see Paige or the slide has come up with the links to register for our next webinars. You can see the topics here, which are all super exciting and interesting. And thank you everybody for taking time out of your day to join us. Appreciate you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Bye.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I'll send
Bye,
a
everyone.
recording now.
Thanks, Paige.